Should what goes on between consenting adults ever end up in the courts? In a report published tomorrow, the neoliberal think tank, the Adam Smith Institute, argues for British laws to be updated to take more account of consent when it comes to practices such as body modification. Now, if you're a wee bit squeamish, you might want to turn it down for a couple of minutes. But, you should be all right. We'll look after you. Body modification can include having your tongue split, your eyes stained, or even having your nipples or other body parts removed altogether. But in March, a tattooist called Brendan McCarthy, who is also known as Dr. Evil, was jailed for 3 years and 4 months for grievous bodily harm. And he was charged with that for carrying out body modifications. The Adam Smith Institute says basically our laws are now utterly outdated and people should be able to consent to body modification. But this could also have implications for sexual practices such as bondage and in the future with what's called transhumanism, the idea that we can get technology implanted into our bodies. So, are you with me so far? Okay, cool. Matthew Lesh is Head of Research at the Adam Smith Institute. And we've also got Body Arts, who has undergone many body modifications, including by Dr. Evil. Thank you both very much indeed for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Matt, what are you arguing when it comes to consent, essentially?
So from our perspective, what we're looking at is really this inconsistency in the law. Under the existing law, you can consent to have your ear pierced, to contact sports, to religious flagellation, but you can't consent to these voluntary changes to your body. Now, I think the great philosophy of this is this British idea, not my cup of tea, but where's the harm? What happens to go on between two consenting adults, even if it makes a lot of us feel squeamish, even if the vast, vast majority of us would never have it done to ourselves, doesn't mean that we should be sending people to jail for years for doing it.
It's interesting. I'd love to know what everybody listening tonight thinks about this. 85058 is the text, at BBC5 Live on Twitter. I suppose, Body Art, my issue around this would be, yes, it's a consent, but if it could really hurt you, if you could be left in any way physically impaired afterwards, is it right for somebody who's not really a doctor to carry out what's essentially a medical procedure on you?
Well, we're giving consent at the end of the day, and we do a lot of research. I mean, we're a whole community as well, so a lot of us talk back and forth about different surgical procedures. And like anything, there's risk with any kind of surgical procedure. I mean, like staining your eyes, for example, there's a great risk of blindness, potential death, so people would definitely question why would you have it done. It's actually a procedure that's been around for about 2,000 years, believe it or not, eye staining. And then there's other procedures that are even, outdate that as well. So I can understand the surgical side not having a license, but people like Brendan was like, he was in his element, really. So that's why we went to him.
Yeah. What did he do for you?
So he split my tongue once. I need to get my tongue re-split. He removed both my nipples. He shaped my ears. He done a flesh tunnel in my labret. He wasn't too big on the eye staining. He didn't offer that procedure himself. And I also saw him refuse a few procedures on a few people as well. So.
Like what? What was he? Where did he draw the line?
So, well, obviously he wouldn't do eye staining if he believed that was too risky, and he refused to remove a toe on myself. Whilst he'd done a transdermal on my forehead, he refused...
What's a transdermal? Sorry for asking loads of questions.
A transdermal is a form of implant. It's a titanium disc that goes onto the bone. He done a couple on one client while I was there, but he then later refused to work on the client that wanted multiple body modification procedures done at the same time.
Can you explain to me, Body Art, what it is about what you get from having these procedures done to you?
So
What
for
do you get?
myself, for myself personally, it's an alternative type of beauty. Whilst people might not get it, I'm living my life as body art, my own personal type of body art. When I die, I'm going to be preserved, so I go from body art in life to skin art in death. Now, that's a different type of philosophy from most people in the body mod community, but we are a type of community. You know, we're a minority group of people around the globe.
I guess that what I would be worried about, and I get that that the whole consent thing is outdated. I think that's probably pretty wise that needs, Matthew, to be looked at again. But surely there have to be laws somewhere to stop people like this man that's gone to prison, Dr. Evil Brendan McCarthy. I mean, it was just up to him whether or not he decided to take off Body Art's toe, you know. Whereas really, one would have thought that there should be a law against maybe removing an actual digit.
Sure. So I think that the laws could be specified in such a way.
No offence, Body Art. You know, go on.
Where basically, in this particular case, I mean, the procedures that were done, each individual, of course, did give their consent, and the judges nevertheless ruled that you can't give consent to any of this. What would say to that is that you could have a system where what you have is basically the same for kind of piercings, is you have councils that ensure that people are through kind of a licensing system, ensures people are providing these services and providing a reasonable list of services in a good environment. What worries me about making this illegal is that we end up pushing it underground. The fact is that there is this small community that's going to want to keep on doing these kind of procedures. If it does go wrong, we want people to be willing to go to hospital, not to be worried about potential legal consequences thereof. It was actually back in 1994 that the Law Commission recommended that these laws be updated the first. Of course, the government never got around to it back then. That was in relation to some BDSM issues, but their logic at the time was actually, I think, quite reasonable when they said that you should be able to consent to it as long as it isn't kind of a too extreme harm to the individual. And you can set the lines at more specific levels rather than saying what's effectively happened, which is you've got these biases of these judges. And that's what goes back to the 1994 case, R.V. Brown, that every law student will learn about, related to sadomasochism, where the judges effectively decided, because they personally disliked the behaviour, that it wasn't acceptable a case of consent. And I don't think that's the way the law should work.
Well, that's it. I mean, and people listening to this as well could well argue that, well, if you're going to have a breast implant, or you're going to have your nose done, or you're going to have this, that or the other, or, you know, basically a fake bottom put in or whatever, then what's the difference? Just because it's not part of conventional beauty and beauty surgery, I suppose, what is the debate? Anuvab, I'd love to know what your take is on this. What are you thinking?
You know, I was reading a little about this. If someone, Sarah, identifies themselves as an amphibian, or, you know, I knew somebody who was very interested in the culture of wolves and found themselves more lupine than human, and wanted some surgery done in that regard, and they consented. I think it's fair game, but you are absolutely right in saying the number of people with medical expertise to make a human being a wolf is limited.
Yes, indeed. And you wouldn't want somebody who was just winging it, really.
Correct. And there isn't like a large history of people that are able to turn, you know, people into frogs. You know, there isn't a long set of cases you can refer to. So
no, I mean, there's a genuine fear there from me, Body Art. That's where my concern comes from. Is that it's not so much that anybody should be stopped from doing that if that's what they want, but it's the danger aspect and who draws the line. And I'm wondering, if it was made legal, would it be, and sort of not legal as such, but if it was kind of more closely monitored and had a specific set of laws around it, and there were licensed practitioners, etc., would it be quite as enticing to the body art community, or is part of it that it is underground?
For sure, because it's been pushed underground now more. You'll find body mod practitioners not really promoting it as much, despite we can go to them. I was talking to one the other day. A few people are actually having work done out of the country, but people are still having it done in this country. I'd welcome, as much as a lot of people in the community, some kind of British... I mean, we've got the Royal College of Surgeons, for example. Now, I know the Royal Family aren't going to put their name to this kind of body modification surgery, but some kind of British institution of body mod practitioners, which is probably made up of practitioners, medical experts, as well as people that have the work done, you know, to lobby the government. We do need the laws changed because we're going to still continue to have this work done. Also, from an insurance point of view, I think your guest Matthew said about clogging the, if it does go wrong, who pays? I wouldn't like to see the NHS take the burden. I believe if you can afford to have this surgery, you should have your own personal insurance as well. So we four there are protected ourselves as well as the practitioners in that case as well. Obviously, we take that risk of potentially going blind. I talked to a girl in Canada recently that had to have skin grafting. They've got a similar kind of healthcare system to ourselves out there. She had to have muscle tissue grafting on her eyeball because she had a complication with ink in her eye as well. It's just a massive risk that we take, and we should understand that, you know, we are toying with our sight, with our bodies, with our lives. Can
I ask you this? When she's talking about what's happened to her, is there an element online in the online forum thinking, wow, you know, that's how hardcore she is, that's how, you know, she's gone all the way? Or are they thinking, that's unfortunate that you went to somebody who clearly didn't know what they were doing? What's the vibe? What's the reaction to somebody having a procedure go wrong like that?
Well, it's just very unfortunate. I mean, like the person that I went to have my eyes done, I had a 2-year break between each eyeball. There is no regulation. It's not a regulated procedure. There is no guideline. I decided off my own back to have an eye test a few days before I had my eye done. Then, like 6 weeks later, I went and had a further eye test. And then every 12 months I decided with my optician to have an eye test. Left it 2 years, and he actually said your non-inked eye could go bad before because our eyes deteriorate year on year. Yet again, it's about being, you know, educated up on health and, you know, some kind of common sense when you're doing these procedures.
Yeah. Matt, just talk me through the issues when it comes to BDSM. So basically, somebody involved in a bit of that in the privacy of their own home, if there is anything goes wrong, then one person could end up in prison. Is that where we are with the laws around that? Is it GBH as well? So
it is counted as GBH. If it is something that is kind of an extreme form of sadomasochism, usually if it's something that kind of breaks the skin in any way. So the classic case about this was a case involving 16 men that was appealed to the House of Lords, the appellate committee. They found that there was not in the public interest for individuals to undertake sadomasochistic behaviour that presented a harm to society. Now, I'm not really sure where that harm is, in the sense that what these individuals did behind closed doors, in fact, was only found out because the police actually actively searched for the videos of this kind of behaviour. But a big undertone of that case at the time was the fact that, in fact, these were gay men who were doing it. It was a lord who said it was degrading to body and mind, another lord who said it was perverted and depraved sexual desire. And there were kind of similar cases where there had been some kind of sadomasochistic behaviour amongst straight couples where it was found to be okay, in cases like R.V. Wilson and R.V. Emmett. Okay. So we have this kind of inconsistency within the law about certain kinds of sadomasochism related to homosexual couples, which have been found to be unlawful, and then other cases where for heterosexual couples it's okay. So I think that kind of reflects this kind of underlying theme about inconsistency. You've got
a Conservative government in charge currently. Do you see realistically any change in the law anytime soon?
Look, I'm not going to say I think this is a priority for the current government, particularly with obviously the B word and everything else going on.
And that's not BDSM.
Not in this case, not not what some people would consider to be the fun B word, the Brexity word. So I can't see this being a current issue, but I think something that's a constant issue of concern and something that's actually quite future-facing about this is the question of transhumanism, where it could become an active issue if we want to encourage technology.
So, yeah, we need to talk about that because that is fascinating.
Absolutely.
And that is the idea, although Paddy from Poplar's texted me to say, oh, you mustn't have a chip in your finger. Somebody will want to steal your bank card by cutting off your hand. I know that is the furthest possible zenith of the worst it could be, true. But presumably something will be put in place to stop people randomly going around cutting off people's hands. But anyway, the idea of it is that it could improve our lives in some way, chips, technology, etc. Yes, but what the current laws could make that whole movement sort of be suppressed in some way. Is that your finding?
Well, I think that's almost certainly the case. So because you currently can't effectively cut into people's skin in order to make the kind of modifications to what this is be effectively trying to upgrade people, try to transform our bodies and our minds, the existing law could make that illegal. So things like installing chips under our skin, upgrading ligaments, the idea of uploading our brains.
They just make it a medical procedure though, Matt, and then the problem's solved, right? And
Well, it could be a medical procedure, but it's not necessarily always going to be of a medical level, and it would make it just much harder to do for the processes to develop. So I think it is something that could emerge as an issue as this kind of technology emerges and becomes the norm. We don't want doctors to spend all day and every day doing something that you might not necessarily need somebody with a full medical qualification to, but someone who's trained up specifically to install this kind of transhumanist technology. The current law would mean that you can't really consent to that. So if we update the laws, that's actually a law that literally goes back to, 1861, the Offences Against the Person Act, add in a defence of consent when it comes to actual and grievous bodily harm, you can kind of address all these issues at the same time.
So you put in this caveat of consent into grievous bodily harm. It's very interesting. It's very uncomfortable. I don't mind saying that to you. I don't think I'm an old prude in any way, but I do find that a little bit. I do find that idea a little bit uncomfortable. We talk so much about consent, don't we, currently in the world, particularly where it comes to sex, and to talk about the idea of an area of consent around being physically damaged in some way. Like, how do you? I know you were saying you've got to have a scale, Matt, of this, but who decides that?
Well, I mean, I think this could be something that's developed in the understanding when the law is changed. It's important to note that the onus would be on the defendant, the person who's done the alleged harm, to prove that the alleged victim had consented to it and that it was something that was reasonable. It's worth knowing that we already do allow certain types of activities that are notionally harmful and even grievously harmful, things like ear piercing or contact sports or religious flagellation. So they are already illegal. This isn't that abnormal to have exceptions within this law. What we're saying is that it should just be applied more consistently across behaviours rather than quite inconsistently at the moment.
Very, very interesting. Thank you both. Good talking to you.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much, Body Art. Brilliant to have you with us. I would have given you your full title, but I'd still be here at midnight, so I'm glad that you took Body Art. Thank you very much. It's good having you on the programme again. And Matt Lesh, thanks so much from the Adam Smith Institute as well. Judy, what's your feeling about all this? Where do I start?
I was as he was talking, I was typing down the words so that I can look and research myself. I feel like, look, there's certain things that's already allowed, plastic surgery and so on, and people are taking it to the extreme. And for some, this might be seen as even more extreme, but it's what is it being done for? What is the tongue being split and the nipples being cut off?
Body Art says it's his expression of what he thinks is beauty.
Right. So to
like
me,
you or I would get a whatever.
Yeah, ear pierce. I think, obviously some people might see it as you have an extension of beauty. You add something on, you might put a lipstick on, you might put an earring on. But I think when you're doing something that completely changes your body or your feature, then you'd have to really question why you're not seeing yourself enough without the changes or seeing yourself beautiful without the changes. And I think that
Yeah, but look, man, how many people would go from being a 32 double A to a 32 double D?
This is what I'm saying. We're already those things are already allowed and it's out there, and we're seeing the extreme. So, to really stop anyone from doing this more extreme, it will just always get more extreme. This one I have to definitely go back and sit down and look about. For me, I found it quite not overwhelming. If someone hasn't really heard about this or hasn't really sat down with someone and really understand it, you can't demand someone to just be happy with how they are. If there's things that they want to change, they want to change.
It does make you wince, though. That's the thing, isn't it? Because we know so little about it.
So, some of the stuff is... When I'm hearing your nipples being cut off,
it's instant reaction.
Why?
It's instant crossing of legs and weakening of wrists.
But I think what they were saying about if it's not put in a certain laws, then it will be underground. Then, there is more risk of people being at harm. But there's people who are getting surgery anyway on NHS, and it's not just causing physical harm, but it's also causing emotional and mental well-being harm as well.
Yeah, it's just a little bit of a world that we know a lot of us know very little about, but so many people go from just being interested in tattooing and piercings to just taking it to the next stage if the procedure is if the procedure isn't particularly painful and you're part of a culture which is expressing itself, a tribe essentially. I mean, there's a lot of that online.
And it's like tattoos. You get one.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's the same, but I'm just thinking of that feeling of having something that you feel makes you feel better. You get one tattoo and you want to get two, and before you know it, you've got 10. So the same with this... this body
modification.
You might go for one area.
But the idea, Anuvab, that it's up to the whim of a man called Dr. Evil whether or not he stains your eye and potentially kills you. I mean, that to me is where that kind of stuff has to be knocked on the head.
Exactly. I've always thought a true expression of oneself must come with less pain. When it comes with that much pain, all these true expressions of oneself, they come with splitting things or cutting things. How about just like sitting down with a nice biryani?
I'm on my way.
I would say absolutely yes. Am I guaranteed that that's going to be I am guaranteed that's not going to be in any way painless, aren't I? Definitely. It's just going to be beautiful. So is there anything that you would have done, Anuvab? Would you get your ear pierced? Anything
God! Oh no!
That's a no.
I'm so terrified of these things. I don't even think I can watch those programs. They have on television where they cover a tattoo parlor over 6 months.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I love those.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to hug those people, and I'm glad that that's an expression of, and I do think that in the future we are going to see this becoming more and more normal. I think this is going to be like plastic surgery.
Yes.
I think someone will split their tongue and someone will want webbed feet, and it's going to be a thing. But I really applaud them for enduring the pain.
Yes.
Because
I didn't ask whether or not body art had anaesthetic. I presume that he does. But the fact that he's had his tongue split once and he has to have it split again. Because the tongue has done what tongues do, which is grow back together again. I mean, it's a little bit heavy, isn't it? I've overdone it now, haven't I? I've over-egged the whole thing. But Judy, I remember piercing my boyfriend's ears with a needle and a cork, and then doing mine straight afterwards and thinking we were all cool in the gang.
And then it goes from piercing your nipple.
I don't know. I'm definitely drawing the line
Not you, but
there.
I mean for somebody else.
Yeah, I know. How do you make that jump?
Where does it stop?
Well, you know what? If you've been doing it and you love your body modification, let us know. 85058 is the text. Are we turning? Oh, no, we're not turning. I'm reading the wrong thing. I'm going to have to say goodbye to Judy and to Anuvab. Guys, thank you so much. Anuvab, I hope you come back. I promise not to talk about scary things next time. See you next time.
It's my pleasure.
For news
And the home of the Ashes and more live Premier League football than anyone else.
This is BBC Radio 5 Live.
Anuvab's thinking, how the hell did I get roped into this programme? It's midnight on 5 Live. I'm Sarah Brett.
The main news this hour, a man's been charged with killing a police officer.